All right. Hello and welcome to ABW Meets. This time it is the bearded Gooner media with these three fine gentlemen. And Ryan isn't here, Rowan isn't here, Gary isn't here. Is there anybody I've missed? There's just the six of you, is there?
Yep.
Jolly good.
Yep, that's it.
Right. So we're going to cover a few things tonight. We're going to talk about how my guests got into supporting Arsenal, whether they were forced to like I was, or whether it was a decision they made themselves they're regretting immensely as every day goes by. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how you got into podcasting, because that's the main point of these shows, and talk about your podcast and what you've done and what you're planning to do. And then if we've got enough time at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about this disastrous season where we're all going to give up supporting football and go and do something more interesting instead. Oh, Stan's gone. I think he's fallen off. Oh dear. Well, we're down to just two of us, three of us then. Oh, no, there he is.
What a power lead.
All right, we're going to start with Stan. We'll start with you, Tannor. How did you become an Arsenal fan?
I love telling this story, but it's. I feel like one of these days I'm gonna have to have my grandfather tell the story, because I tell you the story as he told me the story, because I don't really remember much. But it started in 1989. And there was a program on here in America called the ABC, which is the broadcasting company, the ABC Wide World of Sports. And they would show various sort of obscure sporting events. And I say obscure, but remember, I live in America. So we have American football, baseball, basketball, ice hockey. And in 1989, proper football was not a widely accepted sport over here. But the ABC Wide World of Sports on a recording, this was probably the end of June, give or take, they showed a replay of Arsenal Liverpool from Anfield, final match of the season. We all know how that went. As my grandfather,
we were all there for that game.
As my grandfather tells the story, I was enamored at first by the accents of the commentators, and that's really kind of what sucked me in. I'm a 10-year-old kid at this point, so. Accents are a relatively new thing, but I started watching because of the commentators and the accents, but somewhere along the line realized that Arsenal needed that if they won by 2 goals, they would win the championship. And I'm saying they're going to win the Super Bowl. So, to me, again, 10-year-old kid doesn't know anything, that they're going to win. They're going to win the Super Bowl of their sport. So I'm watching, and they score, and I, as my grandfather said, kind of started to really root for this team in blue and gold. And by the time it was all said and done, Michael Thomas obviously had scored the goal. Everyone says, who's the one player that got you into watching Arsenal? And it would be it for me. It was Michael Thomas. But he scored the goal. My grandfather said I went absolutely ballistic, because I've always had a mind for sports. I've always known what I was watching, and I've always understood what I was watching. As difficult as it might be to explain to someone, but I've always picked it up very quickly. And when he scored that goal, I knew they had to win by 2. And he scored the second goal, of course, and the rest is kind of history. From there, my grandfather, later on at some point that summer, ended up handwriting a letter to the club, and basically just asking for some way, somehow, if they knew of any way to watch games over here, follow the club, and explain to them, just my reaction and things like that. And they ended up sending him a paper schedule of the fixture list. There was a phone number I could call that I could actually, you had to press 1 and then press 5 and then press this and then press that, and you would get the scores of.
I think that would have been 0898 10.
Well, no, whatever it was over here. Yeah, no clue what it was here in America, but that's how I would get the scores. And I knew when they played, and we would get the scores. And they sent me a shirt, they sent me a scarf, and the rest is history. And it was always sort of, Arsenal was always my thing, because no one else in my family, they don't watch. No one watches. My 9-year-old nephew plays. So my brother, his dad, follows for that reason. But even my grandfather getting me into Arsenal, just sort of nurturing it. Even now, he doesn't really watch much, other than to simply say, "Hey, caught a little bit of the Arsenal match the other day. We talk about it a little bit, but that's it. It's not for him. He doesn't care. He doesn't really watch, doesn't pay attention. But I did, and it became a thing for me. And he just kind of took it and pushed me in that direction, and that was it. So if it weren't for him, what's that, Dave?
How many people have you converted to Arsenalism? Because my list is about 15 to 20 people.
I mean, I've tried to get my nephew into watching. I mean, they have my nephews, my niece, they have shirts and whatnot that I've gotten for them for their birthdays or for Christmas. But conversion to the point where I'm at, no one in my family watches. I mean it. I'll call my brother on the phone and say, hey, if you have Cohen, his, my nephew, hey, we're on NBCSN, you can watch if you want to put the game on for him. Sometimes they watch, sometimes they don't. But no, my family are all American football. That's their American football is their sport. Ice hockey, my dad and I. But no one in my family. I haven't been able to convert anyone in my family to watching Arsenal. It's always been my thing. And
probably for the best at the moment, because otherwise your family would shun you.
Yeah. But that's birthday cards. They're just not proper football fans. I say proper football. I don't want to call it the S word. But they just don't watch it. It's not like they're a fan of another club. They support anyone else. They simply don't. If they were to get into it on their own, they would probably gravitate toward Christian Pulisic. And unfortunately, that way Chelsea. But Christian was actually born about 40 minutes away from where I grew up in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Carlisle, England, sister town to Carlisle, England. But they would gravitate more toward him probably if they were to try to figure out their own rooting interest. That would be the way they would go. And in fact, Christian's dad, Mark, actually he played indoor football, if you can believe that. He was a goalkeeper. They played at a place called the Harrisburg Farm Show Complex. And when I was growing up, my grandfather would take me up there to watch games, and that really kind of pushed me in that direction. It's funny, I never actually played the sport. I've never played football in my life. I was an ice hockey player as a kid. So I've never played. It's always just been me watching and just being a fan, being a supporter.
Well, I've heard of indoor soccer, the NASL indoor, because Chris White used to be a magnificent centre-back for Arsenal. He went over to play NASL indoor, and he played as a striker, and he once got 27 goals in a season, something like that. And then I found out later that quite a few times he'd come on as a sub for Arsenal in the 80s and play as a forward. So we have quite a few ex-Arsenal players played NASL indoor and outdoor. Stan, you probably remember Chris White, didn't you?
Chris White, I don't know.
No, centre back. Ended up playing. I think he won the title with Leeds when he went to West Brom and ended up with Rushden and Diamonds. But if anybody knows Chris White, tell him we want him on the podcast. Very interesting bloke. All right, fair enough. I'm on my own there then. Yeah, tell people how you become a Gooner. And from what you've told me, it's quite similar to Tannor's, isn't it? Not that his granddad didn't get you to support them, but
I didn't get a load of free stuff from Arsenal like Tannor did when I started supporting. I wish I did, got scarves and the top. But I think it was a bit by mistake on my dad's part, because obviously I grew up in South London, but on my dad's side, they come from a line of Scotsmen that then gradually moved down to the Newcastle area. And then through ancestors, my great-grandfather and a great-uncle both played for Newcastle. So my dad was a Newcastle supporter. But there I am. I'm living in South London. My nearest football ground was Millwall and then Crystal Palace. So my dad, being coming from a divorced family and living with my mum, we got to that stage where my dad would take me out every Saturday, but we got to that stage where there's only so many times you can do the museums, Madame Tussauds, the London Dungeon. Do you know what I mean? The one where you go and look at the planetarium. So I think he decided one day, okay, I'm going to take him to football.
That sounds a little bit like the premise to Fever Pitch.
Does it?
That's what they do in the beginning of that.
Well, because we've done all of that stuff, right? You know, the Buckingham Palace, the Tower of London. And there's only so many times you can keep doing them, right? And so he came and took me to football. And he wasn't going to take me to Millwall, which was obviously the closest. This is like the end of the 70s. And obviously, you can't take a child to Millwall. We've all heard the stories. So the next nearest place was Crystal Palace. And what he done is he timed it so that the match was Crystal Palace v Newcastle, being a Newcastle supporter. So this is my first time now ever going to a football match, and it was all standing. I was about maybe 9 years old, 8.5, 9 years old, something like that, surrounded by all these tall men. And I grew up with my mum, being from a divorced family, and mainly aunties and female cousins. The only men figures in my life at that age were a couple of uncles and male teachers. So here I am, stood by all these guys shouting. Some of them had rattles. Remember them rattle things? Seriously. Some of them had them fucking round rattle things that they were shaking. I couldn't see the pitch because I was so small, and I hated it. I just wanted to go home to mum. So we finished. He took me home, and in front of my mum, he said, my mum was like, "Did you have a good time?" I remember looking at her, looking at my dad, and thinking, what do I say? So I lied. I said, yeah, great time. And my dad went, good, we're going again next week. And I was like, oh, fuck. I wasn't looking forward to it. So it was either the next week, maybe the week after, I can't remember. We went back to Crystal Palace. But this time, it was Crystal Palace Arsenal. And, I was taking a lot more interest in the actual, what was going on in the pitch. I could see where we were. I could see a lot better. And where we were on one of the touch lines. It was the player that caught my eye and done it for me was Liam Brady. For whatever reason, he kept playing. He was playing on the wing for us that day, and he kept running up. I kept seeing this guy run up and down, yellow shirt, number 7 on the back, socks rolled down his legs, and I don't know what it was. I just came away from that game, and I just said to my dad, "I'm an Arsenal supporter now. That's it. That's still the deal." And that was it. And I was about 9, 10. I'll tell you when it was. It was Liam Brady's last season for Arsenal before he left and went off. I think it went off to Italy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it went off there. So that's how it kind of started for me. And I did have an interest before that with them. Some of the kids in my school were into Arsenal, and I kind of liked the sound of them. But I always remember when I was maybe 6, one Christmas, I was a little bit of a late developer in football. One of my Christmas presents was it was an itchy Umbro. Remember those itchy Umbro football kits you used to get? Horrible material.
Just don't get it wet.
I think it was just my parents probably thinking, what can we get him for Christmas? Let's buy him a football kit. And I hadn't showed any interest in the team at that point. And it was a fucking Chelsea kit. We tried to wear for fucking PE. Horrible blue itchy thing. But then, obviously, when I was 9, 10, and I started taking an interest, that's my Arsenal story. And I was going to say I've never looked back, but where we are now, sometimes I think maybe I should have gone to fucking Newcastle.
If I wouldn't have jumped on the Arsenal bandwagon in 1989 and followed the winner, who knows? Maybe I'm a Liverpool supporter at this point, and I can't even imagine. Could you imagine being anything other than support? Could you imagine supporting anyone other than Arsenal? I personally can't. I don't obviously have a story like Stan's. I mean,
I think I've been saved though, because where I grew up in South London, had I not gone to those Crystal Palace games and come back after the second match following Arsenal, I tell you what would have happened. Where I grew up, all of my other friends, not in school. In school, there were kids there that supported loads of different teams, but where I lived in my area, they were all Millwall supporters. That's what would have become of me. I would have really like down to Millwall, I'll be on Millwall podcast now, talking about biting off chicken heads or whatever it is they do down there. I don't know what they do.
Who are they? Alice Cooper imitators.
They probably just talk about Dennis Wise and the one decent season they've had in the last 30 years. Or the Tony Cascarino Wonderland podcast. Or something like that. That'd be actually Teddy Sheringham, wouldn't it?
We've got young Daniel Ballard. Is it Ballard who's out there on loan, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to get toughened up, I don't know what it's like there now, but I mean, surely that's got to toughen you up. You're playing for Millwall.
Probably would do. Right, Glenn, how did you become a Gooner? I take it those two have had really interesting stories. Don't let us down now.
I'm going to give you the short version, not a Tannor life story, or I don't even have any people like Stan's Uncle Bad Touch who took him to the games. My whole thing is Stan. I'm joking. You know that. how did I go to the point where today my stomach still hurts 3 days from that Brentford game? How did I get to this point? Well, first, Danny, thank you for having me on. I'm so honored to be on this channel. It's such a wonderful channel. You have to my mom was born in Germany. My dad's family and him migrated to America from South America. The love of football has been ingrained in me since I was a kid. When all my friends were trying out for Little League Baseball, I was trying out for goalkeeper. In the I can't even say the S word, but what we call it here in America. And you can blame my late start in loving Arsenal on American television because the Premier League was not televised here until 1998. Before that, the only thing you got was a match of the day played about a week later with 22 minutes removed from it and commercials put in the middle of the game. So until 1998, there was no way to properly follow a team here. So my love for Arsenal grew and grew from there. And then, and I suffered alone too. I didn't think there was anybody like me. And then when Thierry Henry went to the New York Red Bulls, I put on my Arsenal shirt so proudly, thinking I'd be the only one there. And there were a bunch of other people there in Arsenal jerseys. And then after a fire almost killed me, no joke, and I was stuck in a hospital. I was just looking at my phone, because you're miserable. Burns are such a horrible thing. You can't do anything. And all I could do was really watch the thing I hated most, the Twitter, which I swore I'd never be on, YouTube, which I swore I'd never be on. I was one of those old social media, that's not for me. But I was trapped in a bed in a hospital for a week. And I discovered slowly everybody out there, you, Danny, AFTV, same old Arsenal. And, it just grew into this passion where today I am so fucking pissed off at that Brentford game that my family still knows to avoid me with anything too aggravating. So that's my story. It's a little longer than I wanted to tell, but that's how I came from my love of Arsenal. I'm so happy to be on this show, Danny.
Good. I'm glad you're all here. I've known all of you for age. I mean, me and Stan, we've been following each other, being on podcasts 3 or 4 years ago, and I've been talking to you, Glenn, about Vikings and all that other stuff. And if you see behind you that, I want to believe that's. I think we talk a little bit about that kind of stuff. And then Tannor, I've done podcasts with you, and you stole my moniker of being the bearded Gooner. I should have had that, and there will be legal proceedings headed your way.
And my legal team's already prepping our defense.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's not good. So following on from that, I'll start with you, with Tannor. If you knew a nephew or a child's friend, a friend's child or someone like that, or someone in their teens, they wanted to get into football, would you say to them support Arsenal? Because my brother's friend Lauren, she's got a son, whatever his name is, I can't remember, and he used to support Arsenal, and his favourite player was Martinelli, and he's only 8, and I saw him in town last week. I went, "Oh, you're happy with Martinelli?" He went, "I don't support Arsenal anymore. He supports Chelsea." So I've disowned him, and I'm never talking to him again. So if you had to give someone if you were influential towards someone, would you say to them support Arsenal, or would you look at all this and go, "You're probably best that you don't"?
I've always gone against the grain when it comes to the teams that I support. Arsenal that's not really against the grain. At the time, it wasn't really against the grain, but growing up in central Pennsylvania, I had Pittsburgh to the west, I had Philadelphia to the east. I would have, Baltimore, Washington, D.C. to the south, and my family are all big Pittsburgh Steelers fans in the National Football League, American football. And when I was a kid, I had to be different, and I didn't want to follow the team that everyone else followed. It worked out well for me in the end, but believe me, I suffered through a lot of lean years with the New England Patriots. But I loved their old logo when I was a kid, and my grandfather, when they got their doors blown off in Super Bowl 20 by the Chicago Bears, my grandfather said, "Nope, that's your team. That's those are your guys. You stick with those guys through thick and thin." And don't know that I would push Arsenal on anyone right now. I don't know that I'd want to subject anyone to that sort of abuse. But no, I've always been sort of, I'll get you into it. I'll try to nurture a passion in the game. But I've always believed that you will find yourself in a club somewhere. There's a saying from Dennis Bergkamp, and I've seen it. I don't remember it. I'll butcher it, but basically paraphrasing, you found yourself there. You don't follow a club because of the trophies that they've won, or all of the accolades, or
I think Harley would disagree with you there. Yeah. That's the only reason he's supporting them.
Well, but at the end of it, he says something like, "You somewhere in this club, you found yourself." And it would start off as Arsenal, just like it has with my nephews and my niece. I get them shirts and I try to get them to watch. My oldest nephew will most likely make his own decision, and if it's not Arsenal, it's not Arsenal. Would I like it to be? Sure, because it would be something that we could share together, a passion we could share together. But he's a big Cristiano Ronaldo fan, as most 7, 8, 9-year-old kids these days are. But would I force it on them? No, that's never been my. No, you're going to support Arsenal or now. That's not me. But I will try to nurture it in terms of the merchandise that I buy for them and things like that. I try to be the cool uncle when it comes to that stuff. So
it's very generous of you, Glenn. How about you? Have you? I was going to go to Stan. I'm looking at Stan's name and I said Glenn. I don't know why I did that, but might as well go with Glenn. Have you managed to convert anybody? Because me, my mum, my dad. My brother says Liverpool, but he knows fuck all about football. Sean's mum used to be a Spurs fan. All of her family were, converted her. Sean's obviously an Arsenal fan. Over the years, I've probably taken 50 different people to the football because I always have one person come with me. So I converted loads and none of them thank me. None of them even speak to me anymore.
There's your thanks, by the way. They don't speak to you. There's your thanks.
1998, 2004. Oh, the sun shone out my arse. Now, dead to me, the lot of them.
The crowd that I hung out with, I'll give you an example of their attitude. The first time I wore an Arsenal jersey, my friend Al said to me, "What the hell is that?" I said, "It's an Arsenal kit." He said, "Oh, I thought you just really liked an airline because of Fly Emirates on the front." That's the kind of people I hung out with. Okay, so no, I didn't convert anybody, and the hell with them. This club has brought me so much joy and misery, and I don't know how to describe it.
So if you met a small child who was interested in knew that you liked football, would you say, "Go on, you support Arsenal," or would you not want to be so cruel?
If it was my son, if he didn't play GTA 5 24 hours a day, and he was attracted, he's got so many similarities with me, and what drew me to Arsenal was class and style. And if my son was like that, I would have encouraged him to be an Arsenal supporter.
But you'd rather run around all day shooting hookers and stealing cars.
Yes.
Well, that's the way London's going.
I mean, let's face it. Wouldn't we all like to?
Well, you could move to London. You'd fit right in at the moment. Smash up a few police stations and graffiti the place.
Behave yourself.
This time, Stan. Would you give the advice to someone who was younger if they asked you?
I don't really have a lot of niece or nephews around me, and I'm not a father. I mean, obviously, if I did have a son, he'd have to support Arsenal, or I'd either end up probably raffling him off or sending him to the local orphanage. It'd have to work. And similar to that as well, if I'm in a relationship, then the girl in the relationship has to buy into it. Otherwise, that relationship is probably not going to last. And I've been with my missus now for 10 years. But I think my missus is one of them as well, because she's not from England, and I'm into this like soccer team. She tells me that she supports Arsenal, but I think she does it for me.
Yeah, my wife asks me after every game. I'm sorry, Stan. I didn't mean to interrupt you. My wife asks me after every game, did Arsenal win? Because she wants to know what kind of mood that I'll be in. And just to further explain upon myself and converting people, I have a 19-year-old daughter. Thank goodness I did not introduce her to Arsenal, because she's been, and I'm not even joking, she suffers from depression. And thank goodness that would have just meant more therapy being an Arsenal fan.
That's not good. Talking about, you were saying about kids. I've got a line for my daughter when she annoys me. I go, "You've only got one dad. I can have plenty more kids." At the moment, I've got one. And you do as you're told. And I said, "You're lucky you're an only child, because if I had another kid, even if it was ginger and it was fat and ugly, it would still be my favourite." That doesn't go down well either. So what was I going to say? Yeah, so Stan, the gist of it is that when your missus says to you, "Do you like this handbag?" and you go, "Yeah," that's the same way she treats you with football.
Kind of like, she'll be like, "Oh, the Arsenal game's on tomorrow. What time?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, it kicks off about 12. And she gives me all this thing about how we're going to watch it. And then she goes, "Right, I'm just going to pop out down to the shops." She won't come. She comes back. It's like 10 minutes before the end, and she's like, "So what happened then?" But still plays the interest. But bless her. She's doing it for me. So
Can you get her to wear a kit? That's the test.
But I will say though, like, one of my best ever gifts was just before I moved from Europe to Canada. I was living in Amsterdam. My 50th birthday, she pulled out the stops. She arranged with a good mate of mine back in England, who's a Spurs supporter. She got us 2 tickets for the North London derby, the one that you was at, Tannor, the one with Emery, 4-2. That was all a surprise. And she also somehow went online somewhere and got me my favourite JVC yellow away Arsenal top with Paul Vieira on the top, and it was match worn as well. So bless her. I mean, that was my 50th, and it's probably one of my favourite birthdays
the
ever.
O2 one, the bright yellow.
No, the JVC, the yellow with the blue bar from the Bergkamp.
Oh, right, okay, yes.
Let me give you something from the opposite spectrum of that, which sounds awesome, Stan. You're a very lucky man.
Very lucky.
My wife gets her way with everything except Arsenal. I get that 2 hours no matter when it is. That shows you how deeply I love Arsenal, that I don't concede to her in any way, shape, or form, where she has finally accepted it. So, yeah, that's the thing with me and my wife. She wants to know if Arsenal won, lost, or draw, to know the mood I'll be in, and she gives me that 2 hours no matter when it is.
So you've had an extension built for the rest of this season so that she can go and live in there, because it's going to be a nightmare all season.
My significant other doesn't ever get the opportunity to do things like what Stan's missus did for him. I'm way too much of a control freak for that stuff. So whenever there's something I want, I buy it. I don't give her the opportunity. Whenever we plan trips over there, I'm the one planning, because if I leave it up to her, we'll be lucky to make it to the airport on time. I almost have to pack her suitcase for her, because she's like, I'll do it the day we leave. It's like, no, you won't do it the day you leave, because I'm not going to sit there for 3 hours when we need to be at the airport in 2, and you're still trying to figure out your outfits. So
every time although Sean's mum doesn't live here, we've been separated over 20 years. We all still go out as a family all the time. Birthdays, Christmas, Easter. It's her birthday tomorrow, and we're all going out for dinner, and we just go and do stuff. And my idea is, right, we're leaving at 1. Go. 1 o'clock, we're leaving, we're getting in the car, the van, and going. And them lot, I'm just having a sit down. Oh, I've got to go. No, I'm going now. And I go off without them. And I say, no, I'm going to go. I'll see you later. I'm not waiting around for you. Because you lot are unorganised shite hawks.
I'm the same. I'll go without you then. I'm the same.
I'm out of here. You don't want to go? Fine, stay here. Right?
I love the one as well. Getting ready to go out, and my missus will go then. Right, are you ready then? I'm like, I've been ready for fucking ages.
I was ready 3 days ago. What are you talking about?
If I ever went on holiday, I swear I could get everything I'm taking on holiday for 2 weeks in somewhere warm. I'd get it all in a Tesco carrier bag. I'd wear the same thing virtually every day. If I can't get it in a bag, I'm not bringing it. And they, I need 400 kilos of bloody furniture and clothes and appliances.
That is me.
Tesco's bag.
Anyway, right, Tannor. How did you get into podcasting? This is the meat of the show, because this is the bit that I always find massively interesting. How did people get into it? I know how Stan got into it. We're still going to ask him.
So I went to school, university for broadcast journalism, basically. And I was a young man when I graduated with my degree and said, nope, I'm going to fuck off. I don't want to move to Midwest bumfuck and do the weather report on some godforsaken, news channel out there. And so I bided my time, and I bided my time, and I bided my time, and I became a bartender and was having fun bartending. And long story short, I never did what I wanted to do, which was ultimately host my own sports talk radio show. Well, that didn't pan out. And then the invent of the internet and the lovely thing that now is YouTube and the world of podcasting. And now anybody can be a radio star. And so that's pretty much, it's not a very interesting story, but Glenn said something interesting the other night that I'm going you sure did. Well, it's we all have a creative outlet. We all have a creative process. That's why we do this. It's part of why we're in this, and that runs in me as well. I have that creative sort of streak in me, and this is the way I do it. This is the way that I get my thoughts and my ideas of sports out there. I knew from a very young age that I just don't have it to play professional sports, but I want to work in professional sports somehow, some way. And I've never, 42 years old, I've never achieved that goal, but I suppose it's never too late to start to try to achieve that goal. But I podcast, and the great thing about it is, while the story as to why I do this isn't that interesting, it has given me an opportunity to meet people very much like the three of you that I certainly consider friends and would absolutely buy any one of you a beer and a shot. Look forward to meeting all three of you at some point. And it's been great to connect with people from all over the world that share a passion that I really don't have anyone around here to share that passion with. So it's nice to be able to do this and connect with people who do share this just like I do. And sometimes they think I'm crazy when I say that Hector Bellerin should play in the midfield, because that's where his heat map shows he plays anyway. Remember that one from last year, Stan. I come up with some harebrained ideas, but that's how I got into it. Glenn over here, when he first, when Glenn and I first connected, he was very flattering. I wish he would have stayed that way. I'd like him a lot more.
Well, I saw you. You were a friend of mine. I saw you being attacked on Twitter, so I immediately.
He leapt to my defense, and then he flattered me, telling me about his radio experience, and I should have done it myself. And ever since then, it's just been one crazy hayride with Glenn. So.
So do you remember the first Arsenal podcast you listened to? Because me, like most people, it was the Tuesday Club. Well, I think whatever it was called before the Tuesday Club. And then the second one would have been Arsblog. And then Arsblog was one of the reasons why I thought, I wouldn't mind giving this a go. And then that was 2012, my first one. So what was your first Arsenal podcast, do you remember?
Arsblog was the first. That was the absolute very first. But I would not say that I listened to it religiously. I might get lambasted for what I am about to say, but probably the first ever, I'll say, show that I really followed and would really look forward to, quite frankly, was AFTV. And it was in their early days with Robbie and some of those guys. And I couldn't get the analysis here that I was getting from those guys, whether you agreed with it or not. I enjoyed the product at the time, and I'm going back 6 or 7 years ago at this point with them. But that's really probably, if I, and like I said, people may not, I'm sure I'm going to get some hate for this, but
people give AFTV a lot of shit, but you try doing that yourselves, building a massive podcasting empire. Robbie's a lovely bloke. I'm friends with a lot of the people from there, and what he has built there is something truly amazing. And to sustain it, he started the month before I made my podcast debut. I think it was about September, October 2012. And what he has done to now and is still doing to this day, I don't watch a single thing of it. I like some of the people, but it was like you were saying, it's a little bit like the MTV of podcasting. You're going to get a little bit of everything. It's aimed for a younger audience. Yeah. And if that gets you into football, then you move on to other things that are going to be a little bit more analytic and a little bit more understanding, a little bit more of like Fergus and what's it called, their podcast, Guns and Yellow Ribbons. They're doing an 8-part series on the history of Arsenal with Mark Andrews and Andy Kelly, which is fan. I'm only into the second one. It's fantastic. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't get that in other places because that's not their market.
Right.
So don't worry about people being poking you or poking you with a stick because you said you used to get into it via AFTV. Nothing wrong with that. Glenn, how about you? Carry on.
No. Go ahead, Glenn. Go ahead.
What's the question? How did I get into doing this?
Yeah.
Oh, well, BG has pictures of me and a horse. That's how I got into doing this. If you do it with a horse, you always have a ride home. So, no, it was by accident.
And if you kill it, you've got dinner.
It was in the hospital bed. And so remember, I did not know this universe existed until about 5 years ago. In a hospital bed, I was watching Robbie at the World Cup. And of course, YouTube with their little suggestions of what's on the bottom, I'm like, hey, what's this? Bergkamp, what is this? And that's how I got into it, all by accident. I needed, after radio, to have a creative outlet. I was on Facebook making, videos of my life as Mr. Mom for my old radio listeners that were enjoying them. But, Facebook, you can only tolerate looking at people's grandkids for so long. Once I discovered this whole universe, I was like, this is fantastic. And I went on to seeing all of these great podcasts and seeing all these people as passionate as I am. And to this day, this isn't a career for me. I don't ask people to follow me on Twitter or subscribe to YouTube or whatever. This is all just fun. I enjoy meeting people who love the club that I do. And this isn't anything. I'm not into podcasting or whatever, vlogging, whatever this is called. I just enjoy doing this, and it gives me a creative outlet, something I need to stay sane.
It's good. It is. It's a good way to vent your spleen, and there's a lot of venting coming out. So, do you remember what the first actual Arsenal podcast you listened to was?
Oh, wow. Oh, what was it? Same old Arsenal, maybe. It might have been same old Arsenal, because I remember taking a shot at Graham in the live comments, and he shot back at me. I was like, I had instant respect for him. So yeah, that was probably it. Same old Arsenal was the first full show that I watched.
Great way to start. Stan, I know the answer to this, but how did you first get into podcasting? And then what was the very first Arsenal podcast you ever listened to?
Well, the first podcast that I ever appeared on was yours. And it was, I was living in Amsterdam, and it was when you used to do the transfer window, final day countdown, and you'd be on it seemed like the whole day. And you'd ask your listeners, if you want to come on, let us know, and you can come on. The slots were half hour each. And I appeared on one of those and quite enjoyed it. But what really got me into actually actively podcasting was moving from Amsterdam and moving to Canada and not knowing anybody here, just me and my missus here in Vancouver, having no sort of base. I decided that I wanted to start watching at Arsenal, and if there was a place where I could watch it with other Gooners, it would be a good way to meet people. So I found out where that was downtown. There was a pub where Gooners were watching, and I went there for the first time, and I sat in the wrong place where everyone sat. I sat in the totally wrong place. I didn't want to get up and start reseating myself in a game. And when I came back, my missus said to me, "Did you meet anyone? How was it?" I said, "Yeah, there's definitely Gooners go down to this particular pub." I didn't get to really chat to anyone. And then I was at the same time I started listening to a podcast which isn't around anymore, Sunny TV Unfiltered. And during one of his podcasts, he asked for any of his listeners that were living globally to send him in post-match reactions and little videos, and he'd put them on his show after each game. So I thought to myself, well, if I start doing these post-match reactions down at this pub, it'd be a lot easier for me to get to know people rather than just walking up to people and saying, "Hello, I don't know anyone. Can I come and talk to you?" Do you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? And just like becoming like a limpet on their table, just like sticking there. And it was good. I started doing this thing called Gooners in Vancouver, and it became a regular thing at this pub. I got to know quite a lot of people. I got to the stage where, as the game was finishing, I'd have people start crowding around the table because they all want to get on and say their piece. These are people that were going there every week. So for me, Arsenal helped me to get to know a lot more people. And obviously, just after moving into Canada, when I moved there, we went into lockdown. So again, it really took away any opportunity that I had to go out and meet people. So the podcasting world for me has been a great way for someone that's moved away from all of their family and friends over to the other side of the world to still have a little bit of a community. So when I am invited onto podcasts, I really look forward to it, because for me, this is the equivalent of going down the pub with maybe 5 or 6 people, having a beer and talking about the footy. You know, I literally have one mate in Vancouver, my mate Gooner Mike, who I met from the pub because everyone scattered for COVID, that I will meet up, you know, and have a pint with, and we can, not just about Arsenal, but other things. So this whole podcasting thing for me has been a way for me to have other companions that I can just chat the shit about. And my missus said to me, she's like, you seem to be really enjoying it, and you know, why don't you start up your own channel? But that's not for me. I mean, I see the hard work that people like yourself, Danny, people like BG down there, what it takes to start up a channel. And I just think of myself as a podcast whore. You know, if you invite me to a podcast and you want to chat about Arsenal, and as long as, you know, the time works because of the time difference, I'm more than happy to come on and chat Arsenal. But doing all that hard work and starting up a channel and all of that stuff that I know that it takes, because I've been around so many people that does it, I just don't think that part of it's going to ever be for me. But more than happy to come on and just chat shit for an hour or so.
Yeah, I'm definitely a whore like that too. Anybody asks me, I will be on. I wish I could do watch-alongs, but it sucks because in the UK, you're like 45 seconds ahead of us. So if I'm watching a game with guys and they're cheering or yelling, I don't see it for 40. So I can't do that. But I would love to have that feeling of being in a pub and you know, watching a game with everybody in real time. You know, I would do watch-alongs except for that time difference. That's how much I
could pause it. You start the game, so everybody pause the game at 1 minute, and then at 1 minute you press play.
To do that. I can't ask them to do that. Yeah. But yeah, you know, I have so many great memories of going down to the Blind Pig in Manhattan, which is the Arsenal pub here. You know, and it's just fantastic. That were my most memorable moments.
Stan, what's the first podcast you listened to? Do you remember?
Yeah, the first ever Arsenal podcast. And I think it was probably the first ever podcast that I'd ever listened to was Arseblog. It was Arseblog. My mate. And it's funny because my mate from the UK, his name's Tannor as well. His surname, but he's known as Tannor. It's his surname, John Tannor. He's the one that got me into it. And the very next podcast that I started listening to on a very much regular basis was yours, Danny.
I didn't know that. I didn't even know that we were the first one that you did until you told me before the show, because we were talking for a while before the show started. Yeah. I just had to look up. It was the 1st of September 2017.
Wow.
And you were on with, you were right, and the bloke called KP Large, who I don't know, Jeffy O'Hara, who I do know. Oh, no, wrong one. Where is it? Oh, no, here we go. You were on part 3 with the Femster. Femi, who's now part of the podcast, someone called David Lee, and Tim H, who was from South Africa, who's just moved over to the UK a few years ago. So,
and if I remember rightly, that was Femi's first ever appearance on another Bergkamp Wonderland. I'd never been on a podcast before. I don't think Femi had, and that was definitely his first appearance on your show. Now he's one of your regulars, right? It's part of the show.
Yeah, and I just had to look at David Lee's Twitter, and he's still tweeting.
Oh dear God! You know what, Danny? You should work for the government. That's scary that you just pulled up all that information.
Oh no! On the ABW website, I've got an index, and every show anyone's ever been on, I've got it. So it says Stan, and it says show 204 and 200 and something else. So I should go and update this later and put it on. So if anybody wants to go, I want to look at what show I was on. I don't know. Go to our bergkampwonderland.co.uk. Go to index and Control F and find your name, and it's on there. Only for podcasts, though, not for the post-game shows. Didn't do it for that. Question only for you, Tannor. How did you come to the conclusion you wanted to start your own channel, and how hard was it to start your channel? Because when we started it, there was only 4 other Arsenal podcasts, and you didn't have to be any good to get 30,000 views per show. Now we get 2,000 or 3,000, including iTunes and that lot per show. And then some people, I see you're doing loads of really good comment. I watch your show, so it's obviously a decent show. But it is, you are like kind of flogging a dead horse at times, because 5 or 6 years ago, you'd be getting 10,000 views a show. And then now you're slow. It takes so long to build up the following. And like with Mike and Andy, the Gooners pod, I watched that for years and they'd have 5 or 6 people watching. Now they're getting 40, 50, 60.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the High Priest squad. They had 600, 700 the other night. It will come if you keep sticking with it. But do you ever think, oh, I can't be? There's 500 Arsenal podcasts out there. There's not enough jam for everybody to have jam on toast.
Yeah. It wasn't, I mean, it wasn't hard to start the channel. It was just a matter of you gotta, put the time into it to, get the graphics created and find the time to do the shows. And that's kind of a difficult thing for me, is just finding the time, to get everything in. And it's hard to justify, for me, it's hard to justify the time because I'm not making any money off of it. And, the world keeps spinning. So it wasn't.
The fact that you're never going to make money, does that put you off a little bit? Or because I was saying to Stan before the show started, some months we would make 200 or 300 quid a month from donations and all that other stuff. And I turned all the donations off during COVID because people didn't need. I didn't want people giving us money. And now an average show will get 50p, maybe 40p a show. And YouTube has suspended our payments because I'm not tax registered. So all the money from the adverts will just keep building up and we'll never get hold of it. But it must be hard to be putting all those out. I don't work, and plus I've got enough money. I can pay for everything all on my own. But it must be a bit daunting to think that some people are making a fortune while everyone else is doing just as much hard work. You're getting nothing out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it. You know what? If I'll put it to you like this: if you gamble, and I mean, you go to the casino and you gamble, as long as you do it for entertainment and you don't ever do it as a job, you'll never walk out of you'll walk out of the casino disappointed. I'll leave the show if that's the way I looked at it. But I don't look at it. I look at it as entertainment. I look at it as an opportunity to make more friends and build a rapport and build a network of people who share, again, a passion of mine that I don't really have anyone else around here to share my passion with. I can go to my local, I listen to Glenn and Stan talk about, going to their local pub and watching Arsenal. I go into the pub that shows Arsenal around here, and I'm surrounded by Scum fans, or I'm surrounded by United fans, or I'm surrounded by Chelsea fans. Everybody goes to the same place. Like we don't have our own pub. And it just, So I look at it as, no, this is a way to network. It's a way to chat with other folks that share the same thing that I do. And I enjoy this. I started off and I thought, I can do this. I could do this and I can build it to the point where I'll make money at it. And the goal is there. It's a long-term goal. It has to be. I'm at 953 subscribers as of last check-in there.
When you get to 1,000, then can you monetize it?
I think it's at 1,000 subscribers. You can monetize. You have to apply for it. They'll look at a bunch of different things with your shows. So you can apply at 1,000 subscriptions, and we'll go from there. But I think that as long as I keep kicking out content, if I can be consistent with it, I can build something here. Will I ever get to be as big as AFTV? No. That market is cornered. No, that is, to think that I'll get to that point, it just won't happen. Could I survive? Would I be happy if I made enough money to pay a utility bill a month? Absolutely. I would be thrilled if people actually offered me money to say, here's 99 pence to say, I support what you're doing. I appreciate the content. Here you go. I would be absolutely over the moon about it. When I started this whole thing, and I'll tell you really quick, I know Glenn wants to jump in. I'll tell you really quick. It was 2019.
You can tell. I can
tell. It was August of 2019, and I was in London. I was in England, and I was there for the home opener against Burnley. And we were just talking about this last night, the Danny Ceballos coming out party. Go ahead, Glenn, chuckle. But I came up with this crazy idea, and I thought, what if I started my Twitter and started a YouTube channel, and I called myself the Bearded Gooner. And I, got the beard, the whole thing, and I went down to the Armory and I bought a jersey, bought a kit, and had them print it with the Bearded Gooner on the back of it. And I go to the match, and I have people coming up to me left and right. Like, this was within a matter of days. I went from probably 300 followers, 200 followers on my Twitter account which I did nothing with, to by the time that day was over, I had gained 1,000 followers. I was pushing 1,500 in one day. I got 12 to 1,300 followers. I ended up at the Tollington, people buying me, a pint, a shot, left and right. Oh my God, are you wanting a picture? I'm like, whoa, like I am I going to be turned over to the authorities in England here? Like, are the bobbies going to come get me? I don't, what's happening here? But it was something else. And, but you know what? It's just, like I said, it's entertainment for me now. It's just a way to network, make friends, and chat footy with some great people.
Yeah, that's a healthy way to look at it. If this wasn't fun, I wouldn't do it. And I don't ask for people to follow me on Twitter or subscribe to YouTube and if they do, I subscribe back, because if they find something interesting about me, I'll probably find something interesting about them. And I have, I'm close to 800, I think. I don't even pay attention to that stuff. People following me on Twitter, and I'm honored. Going back to BG's point, I'm glad I don't want to make a career of this, because Danny, this is no offense to you. It's just something frustrating for me with England, is that you dismiss us Americans and don't respect us, don't like us for whatever reason, and it's impossible to reach AFTV numbers if you're an American. And I'm glad that you realize that's never going to happen, BG.
No, Glenn, they don't like you. They love me. They love me, damn it. They don't like you.
Danny, that is not a slight, but I know there's.
I know you're right. I can't stand any of you.
Perfect timing, my friend. Yeah, so I'm glad that I have no aspirations except to have fun doing this, because there's too much of a built-in disrespect for American fans.
And that's why they pay me to hang out of them. It's purely for legitimacy reasons.
And they got a London geezer on there. They got to be real.
Listen, man. I needed some sort of credibility to do the show. So when I was approached to host Same Old Arsenal USA, the first name that popped into my head, well, I got to have an ounce of credibility here, so I got to get Stan in.
So I've had a few. It's quite big. Quite a few large Arsenal Twitter people contact me over the years and gone, I'm thinking of doing this podcast stuff. How much money can I make? And if that's the first thing they say, I go, don't bother. If you want to do it and you want to, the most important thing is to have fun and just talk football. And that's the way ABW has gone back to, not live, only doing one show a week, gone back to the thing that makes it the most fun, talking football with mates.
For me, real quick, I swear, 10 seconds. For me, the most important thing in the way I interact with people on social media is I talk to them like they're in the same room with me and respect them and their opinion. And if we disagree, I try to talk to them. That's 10 seconds. Go ahead.
Just if you don't do it for the fun of it, then you're not doing it for the right reason, because you're never really going to make any kind of money out of it. Those days of it's mainly YouTube, the lots of ad apocalypse on YouTube, and you're making no money unless you can get a bit of sponsorship going. And then whenever we do anything, we say we do it for nothing, unless it's gambling or alcohol. Then we won't do it at all. We say to them, we won't bother.
What's the deal with that Manscaped company? They seem to have a monopoly in Arsenal podcasts. But every other podcast is sponsored.
We were
by
terrible.
Manscaped.
We did it once. They sent us me, John, Chris, and I can't remember who the other one. They definitely sent us 4, and they said, "Here's the read." So I didn't do the read properly. We just talked about it for 10 minutes, and then they said to us, "Well," I said, "How many have you managed to sell for the code?" And they went 4. I said, well, you broke even then. That's the last I heard from them. ABW are never going to do it properly.
Reminds me of radio. Here in the States, it reminds me of radio. Here in the States, there's this company called the Vermont Teddy Bear. Okay, and they're like the biggest teddy bear company. And they gave you a script and you had to read it. And if you divulged from it, your company lost the account, which was so much money. Hated doing that. So, yeah, Danny, that was a tough lesson to learn, I see.
Yeah, so like we did one with Playbook Media, where they, a couple of Arsenal fans in America, where they do cups and mugs, and they do placemats and these things of like Arsenal goals, where they'll have be a black picture. You'll have like Thomas, then to Dixon, then Smith, then Rowe, Thomas, and all those other things like that. I've probably got that completely wrong. And they said, "Do you want to do it again?" I go, "Yeah, we don't want anything for it. Just give something to the listeners." And I did it last time, and none of the fucking listeners bothered interacting. So they got advertising, didn't have to give anything away. But the time before that, they gave a couple of things away. Right, Stan, I think you said you might have to go. So we'll start the last question with you.
Me?
Oh, okay. Thought maybe you have to go dinner.
I still got 10 minutes before my son bursts in here.
You just reminded me something of Danny. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember many moons ago, I approached to sponsor one of your shows? And I don't know if I spoke to you. It might have been.
Hold on. I remember that. And me and Gimli both said yes. And everyone else said, we can't be associated with that. Was that you?
Yeah.
I can't remember who. I didn't know it was you, but someone from Holland wanted to grow your own cannabis seeds. Was that you?
Right.
I had no idea.
It was ages ago. Me and my friend used to own a company that was a seed company.
Yeah.
And we started doing sponsorships. And I said to my mate, I said, I'll get these guys because they've got loads of listeners. We
both said yes.
I remember. Yeah.
But the other people on the went, you can't do that in the UK. Grow weed. Oh dear! I honestly had no idea. But I just as soon as you said that, I thought Amsterdam.
I just remembered.
Did you get a reply?
Yeah, I got a very polite no, wasn't it? I think it might have been Gimli that I was talking to, but it was like, and I remember it was like some of us would like to, but you know, there's been a consensus that because we're in the area. But
you might have said you can send him some, but he couldn't sponsor the show.
I did actually send him some. I sent him some.
Oh, dear. Only for medical research purposes, obviously.
Of course.
Right, we'll start with keep on with you, Stan. Your thoughts on Arsenal this season and how you think it's going to go, and however long you want to talk about this. Like you lot of the stuff they've got to go and do stuff. I've got nothing going on, so depending how much time you've got.
I wish I had that problem, Danny.
For me, this is probably the most frightening period that I can remember since I've supported Arsenal. And I was one of those that when Mikel Arteta was appointed, I was 50-50. I wasn't like, no. I wasn't like, oh, yes, please. There was other people that I would have was on my list ahead of him. But I was like, okay, let's see what happens here. But obviously, him being the Arsenal manager, I was always going to back him, just like I backed Emery. And as I've explained before in other podcasts, the last thing that I want to see happen to Arsenal is what I saw happen with Manchester United when Sir Alex Ferguson retired from there. And that is them constantly going through manager after manager like a revolving door. A new manager comes in. He doesn't like what the previous manager's doing. He rips that up. He wants to get rid of this player. He wants to bring in those players. He never gets to the end of his plan before they change and bring in another guy. And you're in this constant flux. So I backed Emery. But it did get to a point where I thought to myself, well, this can't continue. And I'm still the same with Mikel Arteta, that I really want this guy to succeed. And although I'm really disappointed in a lot of stuff that Mikel Arteta has done as the Arsenal manager, some of his decisions, his choices, his attitude about certain things, I still have a couple of boxes that I need to cross off before I can be definitive about it. I need to see the transfer window close, and I need to see what it is that we're going to bring in and who's going to go. It looks really bad at the moment, but it's still open. Anything can still happen. So I want to see what happens there. And then once that window closes, if we are going to bring some more people in, I do want to give them a chance to put those people out in front of us to see if they can get any results. But deep down, I'm of the opinion, Danny, that I don't actually believe it's a case that Mikel Arteta needs to get player A or player B or player C. Because that last match with Brentford, you know, for me, that was a Mikel Arteta team. For me, that's a Mikel Arteta team. A lot of players that I don't want. You remember that tweet? You remember that tweet I put out, Danny? And I put out a tweet of the starting lineup, and I said, "This team has goals in it." And you put in the comments, "Yeah, it certainly has." I definitely thought that team had goals in it, and I was excited. And I really think that was an Arteta team, but we still somehow managed to play in the same nondescript way that I've been seeing Mikel Arteta teams play since he's been at the club. So I don't actually believe that even if he brought in Messi in the window, it would really do much. You know, obviously I'm being a bit facetious when I say that, but I still have to give him an opportunity. I want to give him the chance before we say, okay, that's it, mate, time to go. You know, as a famous friend of ours once used to say. Mm-hmm. But it is getting to that. It is getting to that period now. The decisions that I'm seeing, it doesn't bode well for me, and I've got a feeling that come the North London derby, that's when I've got a feeling that if I'm still seeing what I'm seeing by then, Originally, I said it was going to be October. October is when I'm going to have my decision on him. I've got a feeling that it might be brought forward to the North London derby. So that's where I am with Arsenal at the minute, mate.
And as far as I go, it wasn't that long ago where we were all moaning about always finishing in 4th place. And now we've had 2 consecutive 8th place finishes. That's it for me. I want to preface this by saying look at me, everybody that's watching this. I want to be wrong, but I think Arteta and the front office are killing this club. And unless we get Odegaard and someone to play next to Partey, we're going to see another season just like last season.
Can I just add another bit before you go to Tannor? Something I forgot, because it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently, and that is all of those people that want Mikel Arteta to no longer be the manager. Let's say that we all went to sleep tonight, and when we woke up tomorrow morning, they all got their wish. My question would be, if Mikel Arteta and Edu are shown out of the door, who at Arsenal Football Club is qualified enough to draw up a shortlist, go to the board, the owners, and make recommendations of who the new manager should be? Because the only person that would be left would be Vinay. And I don't think that he's got the qualifications to do that. And let's say that other people got their wish and they decided that they were going to court and try to appoint Conte, who at the club, again, has the qualification to sit down in front of someone with the stature of an Antonio Conte, who knows more about football than I'm ever going to know. Who's going to sit there in front of him and sell him a vision of football at Arsenal Football Club? I just don't think that we've got anybody qualified to do any of those 2 things. And it worries me that if Arteta does get fired, how that decision's going to be made. I mean, I'm looking at it now, I'm like, well, it looks like it's going to be an Alan Pardew, right?
Therein lies the problem.
Stan, I'm sorry, BG. I know you're chomping at the bit. I just want to say, I'm not cutting off my nose to spite my face and saying, fire Arteta and worry about it later. You get your best minds together, if that exists at Arsenal, and get a list of people. You prepare for it. They should be preparing for it right now.
But that's my question, though, Glenn. Who are these minds? Who are they? Because if you take the board, if you take the Kroenke side out of it, if they sanction to get rid of Arteta, they're not physically, personally going to be looking for a manager. They're going to expect somebody within the club to deliver a shortlist and sell them on why it should be this guy. And if you can't get this guy, it should be. Who's going to do that?
I want a manager that's not going to give me a fucking soap opera every day. What's going on with Aubameyang and Lacazette? Why can't he just come out and settle this shit? I'm sick of this shit. It's bad enough for losing. Now it has to be a fucking soap opera? This man has lost control. Sorry, BG.
Oh, it's not a soap opera. It's a TV show on Amazon next season.
Yeah.
I know you don't call it. What do you call soap operas in the UK? They're not called soap operas.
Oh, we call them. Oh, right, yeah. So Tannor.
Stories or something. Whatever.
That's my grandmother always called them. Store her stories. But no, you know what? It's funny. Just the way that Stan ended, and the question that he posed is a great question, because actually the other night I tweeted out basically the exact same question, but I was a little more specific with it. And the question was, what is Josh Kroenke's vision for this football club? And the fact is that there is no one here who has a vision above Edu. And his role isn't even, I don't know. I will say this. This is the one thing that has always sort of confused me. There's a director of football, and then there's a technical director. And I don't know what the job of either of those 2 positions are. Here in America, we would call probably the 2 of them, combine them, and they would be called the general manager in American sports. As the general manager, this club needs a general manager type, and I would equate that to the director of football. And you have to bring in someone at that level that has a vision. Like Stan said, the problem is no one above that person has the vision. So, and no one below them can draft up a list of people to recommend. So we're left with ownership that can't spell soccer, and I'll use that because that's the word they'll use. They can't spell soccer. They probably can't spell Arsenal, to be honest with you. So they don't know their asses from a hole in the ground when it comes to this sport, let alone the fact that it's not played in their country and it's a completely different financial system. They don't understand any of that. So they're left with people whom they don't trust and who aren't much smarter than they are about the entire hierarchy and structure of a football club, left making recommendations to them on how to build the club. So the question, Danny, that you asked is, what are my feelings for the rest of this season?
And if you could end that with a prediction of position for the end of the season.
Arteta will not last this season. It will be a Big Sam sort of hire somebody to just try to steady the ship. Not right it, just steady it. They don't have an idea. Go ahead, Glenn. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say the worst part is that it's like all the Arsenal fans are in a lifeboat, and there might be help with the transfer market, but we're all starting to turn on each other because the food is running out. And it's so frustrating. And guys, I have 2 kids, a diabetic cat, an old cat, and 3 dogs that need me, so I have to go now.
Before you go, Glenn, tell people your Twitter. No,
I'm not into that. If you want to follow me, you'll find me.
Right,
I love you. And
put the at in front of his name on there. That's what it is.
And if you do follow me, I'll follow you back. But only follow me if you find me interesting. Don't follow me just for the fuck of it because I'm on Danny's show. Guys, I love you. Thank you so much, Danny, for having me.
Thanks for joining us, Glenn.
See you later. I was going.
Whoa, where am I at here?
We're going vertical.
There we go. But a prediction as to where we finish, if nothing more changes, and I don't share the same hope and optimism that I think a lot of people do with the fact that there's still 2 weeks left in the transfer window, because
hope and optimism, it could be referred to as delusional.
Well, yeah. I don't think there's a player out there, barring maybe a Leo Messi, that could really turn this club around, simply because I don't think the style suits the players, the majority of the players in this club. And you're talking about bringing in 1 or 2, and all of a sudden the system isn't going to change. He's bringing in players to try to get them to adapt to his system. And that's Mikel Arteta. And I understand why he's so hell-bent on instilling his system. He's treating Arsenal Football Club and its supporters like they're a fire hydrant, and he's pissing on us and marking his territory and saying, no, this is my club and I'm going to do it the way I want to do it, come hell or high water. And we will reach one of those points, hell or high water, by probably Christmas. Prediction, we do not score in the first 3 games in the league. I think we'll beat West Brom in the Cup. I don't think we score against Chelsea. I don't think we score against City. And we lose all 3. The locals are out with their torches and pitchforks. He gets to the North London derby, at which point we've maybe scored a goal, maybe 3, 1 against Burnley, 2 against Norwich. Maybe we win one of those games, go into the North London derby, and a very well-organized Nuno Espirito Santo side in the scum just come here and just absolutely demolish this club and make us look silly. And at that point, I think the board will have, the board, there is no board anymore. Ownership will have no choice but to sack him. And we are somewhere sitting around the bottom of the table, relegation zone. The replacement that's brought in will be an Alan Pardew, a Roy Hodgson, a Sam Allardyce, and it'll simply be get us to 12th, get us to 13th. And we'll reevaluate at the end of the year, at which point we will simply wash and repeat until ownership come up with a clear vision of what they want this football club to be. Now, maybe they have that clear vision. Maybe that clear vision is just be mediocre. We're raking in money left and right. We don't care. We don't need Champions League money because we're happy with what we're making. And if that's the case, then, we're all screwed and we're just going to have to suffer with it. But yeah, prediction for where we finish, I'm going to say 12.
Stan, what do you think?
How do I follow the apocalypse that Tannor just laid out there?
You chuck yourself in a volcano.
That was the end of the world, wasn't it? Literally. I mean,
I agree with every word of it.
But it's true. It's frighteningly true. That's the thing. It really is that daunting. And I would think that for me to give you a prediction, I've got to give you a range. Unfortunately, it's very difficult for me to pin myself to one number. there is no way that we're going to finish any higher than 6th on a good day, is where I think that this team is capable of getting to. However, I also think that on the other end of that range, it could be really low down there. I don't think that we'll be in a relegation fight, but it won't be much above that. It really could be lower than 8th, where we finished for the last 2 seasons, but no way are we going to get higher than 6th.
Sorry, Stan.
I just say a lot depends on. There's still a lot that things that can happen that can change. If there's a manager change, and again, I think that what happened with Chelsea last season should have been a wake up call for a lot of people, because when Frank Lampard went in there, You know, he's had more experience than Mikel at Derby. He had a very good team to play with. Yes, they had a transfer window ban, but he was still given money to keep on shopping. He got the players that he wanted to get in. He couldn't get a tune out of them. And once they identified that and pulled the trigger on it, and they brought in a manager of more experience,
who could have come to us, I think he would have taken the Arsenal.
They won Europe. And I think that there's a lot to be said about who's at the helm of the club. So, you know, if Arsenal pull the trigger quickly and gets the right man in, then, you know, we could get up to something like 6th again.
Do you think that a different manager would come in? Because I wouldn't be surprised if a new manager came in. I gave Arteta before the season. My pinned tweet has got the first 10 games of the season, and I said we're going to win 2 of them, and then he'll be fired. So I reckon if another manager came in, you would automatically see that Aubameyang start playing properly as a striker. You see Lacazette playing better. You see them attacking properly, not getting the ball and going, passing it back all the time, and not playing out from the back because nobody likes it. And then we have got a pretty decent squad, Tannor, haven't we? A decent manager could make this team do really well, like Stan was saying with Chelsea.
It's all about the system. It's all about the system. And the thing is, and this is, you know, everybody thinks that because of the FA Cup win, you know, and the run into that trophy, and then of course following it with the Community Shield against, you know, a strong Liverpool side, that you know, he's a good manager, and I think he will be a good manager eventually. But if he wants to be a good manager right now, he needs to look at the club. He needs to look at the individual players and say, okay, how do I make this work? Here are my ingredients. I'm trying to make spaghetti sauce, and all I have is ketchup and mustard. Well, that's not spaghetti sauce, but you're somehow going to try to make it work, and it's going to taste awful, and it tastes awful right now. The fact is, you look at the ingredients you have, and you try to make a meal from that. You don't plan the meal and then go out and buy the wrong ingredients, and that's really where we're at right now. It's a talented side. We were 6 points with this squad off the top 4 last year. 6 points. I think we've upgraded with Ben White over David Luiz Friday night against Brentford notwithstanding. I think when Gabriel comes back into the fold as the left-sided center back, that will help Ben White. But Arteta, if he wants to stay, has to change the system. This is a 3 at the back, counter-attacking football side right now. That's it. Stop the possession thing, because while you can have 80% of the possession, that doesn't count for anything. What counts are the goals that are scored. And this club, over the course of the last 6 months, has shown a drastic and very worrying trend to not score, to not even create. We're not even close to threatening to score. At any point on Friday night did I think we're going to get back in this. All we need is one. We just need a little luck. We need one ball to deflect and go in the net. We're not even there. We're not even at the point where we can put a shot on and hope for a bit of bad luck on the opposition part, a bit of good luck on our own. We're not a good attacking side. It is pass the ball around the horseshoe. That's all it is. The build out from the back, we don't have the goalkeeper to do that. Pablo Marie showed his iceberg-like status on Friday. He's not the guy to play out from the back. Ben White is. I will say that Ben White, that's why we got him.
Apart from the couple of times when he got caught out of position.
Well, right. You know, I keep seeing.
Then Chambers had to come across, and then we had no one covering at right back.
I see the, Leno playing the ball to Granit Xhaka, and it's very reminiscent of the Burnley game from last year where the ball ends up in the back of the net. we're not good at that. So what Mikel Arteta has to do is it's not a matter of coaching into them your system to make them better at it. It's play to their strengths. Our strengths are Bukayo Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe and Aubameyang, who I still think is a just a hair below being a world-class striker. Alex Lacazette has not forgotten how to score goals, but it's the system that is restraining our creative players from doing their jobs, from doing what they're good at. Nicolas Pepe, Gabriel Martinelli. Our attack we just create some chaos. Create a little bit of chaos in the attack rather than, no. Don't Gabriel Martinelli. Don't you dare come too far inside. That's not your position. You need to stay out there and figure it out from way over there. That's the problem. Granit Xhaka in the midfield, yeah, granted problem. But I will stake my flag into this mountain. This is where I guess I'll die this year. This is not on the players. This is on the manager and his system. If he can change his system, alter his system, design it more to the quality of the players. Now we're cooking. Now we're cooking. But even you go back to last year, and I'm sorry for being long-winded, Danny.
That's
you
okay.
go back to towards the end of last season. We're at a point where we really are counting on the opposition making a mistake for us to score. And I'm okay. I don't care about possession. That number means nothing to me. You can't, if you don't score, you won't win. And we're playing right now, played all preseason, and even at the end of last season, we just don't want to lose. We're okay with the 0-0 draw. Mikel Arteta's okay with the 0-0 draw. Don't concede, and don't lose possession, and don't concede a goal, and we're fine. But we're not fine. We're not fine. So that would be 38 points. That would be 18th place, and we would be relegated if that's what happened every match. But that's how he's playing. You can't if you don't take any risks, you will earn no rewards. It's that simple. Unleash these guys. Let the defense be structured and disciplined in their roles. Let that back four be structured and disciplined in their roles. Let the attacking 4 or 5 players that you're gonna that you want in your attack, cut these guys loose, man. Cry havoc, and let's get the dogs of war. Let's go.
Some of our strongest play should be from the attackers, isn't it, Stan? But Stan, next game home to Chelsea. How is the Emirates crowd gonna be? For those listening, Stan's just pulled a face like he's found a turd in his coffee.
This is the thing, right? Usually after a loss, I mean, if you're starting the season, you're looking at the fixtures and you're looking at our first 4 or 5 fixtures, you've got to be thinking, well, we want to get some points on the board. We've got to try and get all 3 points at Brentford. And if you can't do that, then you want to think, okay, we're going to go into that next game and we've got to make up for it. And which is why I'm kind of glad that they've kind of announced a little bit that the Lacazette and Aubameyang aren't going to be available, because I want that team to go out there and redeem themselves. Redeem yourselves. The only change I would probably make, I would start Saka this time. He should be fully fit now. And I would start Martinelli up front and bring maybe Bellerin off the bench rather than starting him. But it's basically the same team. Go out there, redeem yourselves. But the thing is, they played so objectively bad against Brentford. You look at the next team and you think, well, how are you supposed to bounce back? This team is markedly better than the one that we've just lost to. So I look at it this way. If you're going to lose. But I've always said on our podcast, I can handle losing, but it's the manner of the loss. If we lose the game and everybody's squeezed everything out they've got in there to give, it's acceptable. It's when we lose and you don't understand why, and you can't understand the tactics, or players are strolling around, or they're not doing the things that they're supposed to do. And you hear Mikel Arteta say in his press conference afterwards that the players weren't doing the basic things. And you think to yourself, well, you've been here for 19 months, mate. They should at least be doing the basic things. Why are you unable to get them to do the basics, let alone implement a style of play that you're trying to put on them? You've got to start with the basics, right? And you just told me they can't do that. So I worry against these next fixtures that are coming up, because the only fixture in there that seems to give us any kind of respite is West Bromwich Albion. And usually you would want to use that as the one where you could put out players like Aziz and give them a run out, use some younger kids. But if we've been spanked upside their head before we get to WBA, then you've got to play your best 11, right, to get some confidence back. You've got to put them in there to get them ready again. Meanwhile, we've got players then that are hanging about that don't get minutes. So we've kind of I know that Nicolas tries to tell us that they've got everything planned out, but this is improvisation or like when you see like someone called it like impromptu jazz management. Everyone's playing a different instrument and they're trying to make it sound like one song. So it's a roller coaster ride for me, Danny. I have no idea where we're going or what's going to happen.
But we do know one thing that's going to happen is Kieran Tierney's going to keep running down the left, crossing the balls to no one, and then when we get the ball, we're going to pass it back.
Yeah, I mean, we all know every team knows what we're doing now. They can see that. The problem with me is it's like, if you want to play out from the back, I get that, but you've got to have, there's a key word that we miss in our style of play, and that's variety. We don't have any variety in there. By playing it out from the back, it doesn't mean that you can't kick it long now and again. And especially if you're playing it out at the back, the more that the opposition is going to come onto you to close it down, there's space at the back there. That's when somebody with a bit of legs in them can maybe hang back, and then we can play it long and try and make use of the space. But they're just robotically doing I don't believe that the players have down tools. They seem to be doing what Nicolas wants.
Yep, that's
methodically. And then you've got Nicolas continuously barking what he wants done at 90 minutes. And if you're a player and you do something wrong, and then Nicolas starts trying to tell you, you've done it wrong, this is what I want you to do next time. Well, you're standing there listening to that. The game is still being played around you. No one, the opposition aren't stopping to let you listen to Nicolas for the next one. You're still doing the same. So I think it's a distraction. I think it's micromanagement. And sit down for a bit. Let the game breathe for a bit. If you really want to tell a player that he's doing something wrong, try and get it to half time when you're inside and do that. And the other thing that I'd like to mention as well with that Brentford game was I thought it was very telling. I don't know if you noticed it, Danny, that he brought the players out early after half before the second half.
Yeah, the Brentford players were still standing in the tunnel being filmed.
Yeah, it's away from home. He's brought them out early. They were all standing there with their faces and their heads down because they've obviously had a dressing down. And when you bring players out early for the kickoff, you're trying to say something. You're saying, I'm not happy with this. And it was there for everyone to see. And the cameras went to Nicolas and he had a face like thunder. And I just remember thinking to myself, is this where we're at? And it's the first game of the season. We're supposed to have just had a pre-season where everyone comes together and we're all looking forward to that first game. And this is where we're at. This isn't like 3 quarters through the season and we've lost some really vital games and, we're not playing to the best of our potential and Mikel Arteta is trying to make a point. He's starting that now at the first game. And it doesn't bode well. It doesn't bode well for harmony and, a togetherness. If that's what's happening. It just reminds me of, do you remember when Phil Brand was the manager of Hull? And instead of taking them in at half time, he made them sit round in a circle while he was in the middle. And he was basically giving them all of that. It's one of them. It's one of them, isn't it? It feels like that kind of a thing. I get it that he's angry with them, but doing that on the first day of the season, no. He should have bollocked them inside the dressing room. Give it to them there. Really fun and tell them, be honest with them, but don't bring them out like that. Not in the first game. Where do we go from there?
Downwards. I agree with all of that lot. Yep. Right, Tannor, where can people find you on Twitter and plug your YouTube channel?
On Twitter, I am at the Bearded Gooner, and I am one of those follower whores. I will ask you to follow me simply because I'm putting out good content and I want you to watch.
True.
You can find us on YouTube. Just search Bearded Gooner Media, and it'll pop right up.
Lovely. Stan, do you want to remain anonymous like Glenn does, or do you want to tell people how to find you on Twitter?
You can find me on Twitter at, where is it?
Right there.
And you can also find me over with the Bearded One on BG Media. On Thursdays and sometimes on the Sunday, you can find me over on the Arsenal Fan Circle. And if there's any boxing or UFC going on, then I'm usually with Terry for those doing a live watch along for those punch ups over on Claude and the Bamsters.
Lovely. And for people only listening, it's Stan_the_man68.
Cheers, Danny. Thank you.
Lovely. Right, and thanks to Glenn, who's had to leave because it's getting on, and most people have stuff to do, unlike me. I'm going to go and chuck myself 4 pork chops in the oven, and that's all I'm going to have for dinner. So thank you very much to Glenn, Stan, and Tannor for joining us.
Thank you for having us, mate.
Thank you, much appreciated.
It was an absolute joy. I've just spoke to Stan for nearly 3 hours. So luckily it was Stan and not someone that I didn't already know.
Yeah,
so we will be recording another one of these with the Bruised Banana podcast on Wednesday, but that won't be out until next week. The ABW podcast is planned for this Thursday. At the moment, it's only Carl and Femi. I might be on that one. I don't know, but it'll just be me shouting and screaming Arteta out because I've had enough. And other than that, that's it. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. And we will see you again very soon. Thank you very much.